Hello everyone, my team and I were going to talk about SDG 12, sustainable production and consumption on plastic. Plastic is a material that revolutionized human life in the 20th century. After the Second World War, it gradually became a cheap substitute for the manufacture of a multitude of everyday utensils and objects that were previously made of paper, cardboard, aluminum, or others. Plastic became a great tool of the Keynesian rule of consumption for promoting a faster economy. It reduced living and production costs and created a better quality of life for many people around the world. Plastic is still the material of choice for packaging, containers, and multiple other products because of its value for money. Population growth has boosted the production and consumption of plastic worldwide. While 2 million metric tons of plastic were produced in 1950, the figure rose to 8.3 billion in 2017 and is expected to increase to 34 billion by 2050. By far the biggest plastic problem is the use of disposable or single-use plastic and their mishandling after use. This throwaway mentality has driven the consumption of single-use plastics and environmental pollution to critical levels. In 2018, Indonesia ranked second in a list of countries with the most mismanaged plastic waste in the world. According to studies, the country generates approximately 7.8 million tons of plastic waste per year, of which 4.9 million tons are not properly managed. Part of this mismanagement has to do with limited waste collection services, littering of plastic waste in open dumps, lack of development and enforcement of policies about waste management and recycling, lack of awareness in the population regarding the consequences of plastic waste in the environment, and the impact on socio-economic development. This mismanagement of single-use plastic has led to economic, social, and environmental problems not only locally but also internationally. The lack of recycling results in a global loss of 95% of the material value of plastic packaging in the world, between $80 to $120 billion per year. According to the Global Forum, Indonesia recycled only 10% of plastic waste in 2017, which means that a huge amount of potential raw material is lost every year. Poor management of plastic waste increases landslides and flooding as waste clog waterways and drains. Likewise, large quantities of waste sometimes enter residential areas. This problem increases exponentially in countries that import waste from other countries. In the case of Indonesia, the import of plastic waste increased between 2017 and 2018 from 10,000 to 35,000 tons per month. This has been defended several times with the argument that this waste is potential material for recycling, but as we have seen, the country still does not have the capacity to recycle even the waste that is produced in the country itself. The real reason for importing this waste is purely economic gain, and unfortunately, all the waste ends up in landfills, on vacant land, near communities, and residential areas. In the worst cases, the waste is burned with no regard for the effects such acts can have on nearby population. These affected areas are health risk places for citizens because they are breeding grounds for disease-carrying vectors. When plastic waste is deposited in landfills, much of it releases chemicals that create a liquid pollutant known as leachate, which spread into the soil and contaminate lakes, rivers, and endanger ecosystems. Plastic that leaches into rivers through international littering or mismanagement reaches the ocean and endangers marine life and its whole ecosystem. It is well known that about 8 million tons of plastic end up in the ocean each year. Most of it pulled by marine currents find their way into massive patches of garbage. The biggest and most famous by now is the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, which is a vast accumulation of debris plastic located on a massive area of the North Pacific subtropical zone. It is composed of two large islands, one located closer to the Japanese Southeast Sea and the biggest closer to the North American West Sea. One of the most shocking facts is that over the years, much of this plastic waste is converted into small particles known as microplastics that are consumed by marine animals, from the smallest to the biggest, the same ones that later find their way onto our dinner table. The air also suffers from the consequences of plastic life cycle, the extraction and refining of oil for its creation, its multiple stages of manufacture, and finally also the indiscriminate burning of mismanaged plastic releases greenhouse gas emissions, which increases its concentration in the atmosphere, negatively affecting climate change. According to the World Bank, despite being prohibited by law, waste burning is quite common in Indonesia, and it is still estimated that around 47% of the plastic generated in Indonesia is burned. As we can see, the use of this miraculous plastic material that served to improve the economy and the life of millions of people in the past is today the cause of several problems in our ecosystem, our health, and other areas of human, animal, and planetary life due to the overconsumption, accumulation, and mismanagement that we humans are carrying out. Affordable and sustainable alternatives must be found so that people can buy them at affordable prices and with less or no harm to the environment. It is also vital that the government devote more time and space to solving the country's plastic problems in order to clean up not only the oceans and rivers but also the country's environmental image and put Indonesia in a better leadership position among the Southeast Asian nations. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So I'm going to explain about the Indonesian government policies toward plastic waste and also people's reactions toward the plastic waste itself. So according to what have been read, Indonesia ranks third out of several countries that have the most plastic waste in the world. So according to the data from the Ministry of Environment and Forestry, Indonesia produce an average of 175,000 tons of waste per day. That is 64 million tons per year, if I'm not mistaken, of which 10% to 15% are plastic waste. Only 10% to 15% of this waste can be recycled. So it ends up in a landfills 60% to 70% of the time, and it is thrown away in rivers, lakes, or seas. This indicates that Indonesia will be branded as a country that is not good at decomposing plastic waste or preventing excessive use of plastic. Therefore, the Indonesian government is ready to bear this rating by making several important policies, which the government hopes by making these policies will make Indonesian reputation, is what I meant. So the government of Indonesia implements a paid plastic bag policy in the modern market to commemorate National Plastic Waste Care Day. So because of plastic waste is difficult to decompose, it aims to reduce its use in Indonesia, as shown by the following data, like some harmful organisms can thrive and nest in garbage that is not handled properly. Additionally, garbage has negative impact on the natural world. Water contaminations can result from careless garbage disposal. The thing is that Indonesia government also implement to cut down the plastic waste. Some authorities has also implemented the 4R system. The 4R is carried out by reuse, recycle, reduce, and then refuse in order to reduce the amount of plastic used in various Indonesian industries and also communities. Alternative ingredients have been used to replace the packaging material. So to minimize Indonesian use of plastic, the government has also implemented a system in which customers pay for the plastic bag, as I mentioned earlier. So utilizing an incinerator, if I'm not mistaken, in the refusal process, since there is less waste going to the landfills, this method is used a lot. The landfilling procedure has not been the primary method for reducing plastic waste. Recycling is yet another procedure. In Indonesia, recycling has been done in a variety of ways, like turning waste into asphalt and using plastic as the raw material to make handicraft. In Indonesia, plastic products like plastic bags and gallons are reused as part of reuse process. And also, according to what I have been read, so in Indonesia, actually, the government has stipulated several regulations in which the enactment of this regulation can lead the prevention of waste, including plastic. So one of those regulations is Law Number 18 of 2008 on waste management. So this state law distinguishes between specific waste and household waste, which are the two categories of waste that are managed in accordance with this law. The specific waste referred to includes materials that are toxic and hazardous. Another thing that the government did is also making the regulation of the Ministry in Interior number 33 of 2010 on the guidelines of waste management. As per article of this guideline, the administrations of waste by neighborhood specialists is led through arranging collection, transportation, treatment, and final waste disposal. The process of sorting, according to the article itself, entails sorting household waste in accordance with its type. In every household, residential area, commercial area, industrial zone, special area, public facility, social facility, and other facilities provided by the facilitators the separations of organic and inorganic waste. Several countries in the world have also implemented several efforts to tackle this plastic waste. Some of these efforts are establish a monitoring system and also conduct locally adapted life cycle assessments of proposed alternatives, and then support research and development, as well as raising public awareness. Strengthen national capacity to assess patterns and trends can be a great idea, with distinguishing between plastic types and applications. So the role community in this kind of issue in tackling plastic waste, in terms of taking plastic waste, is very important because the government cannot solve this problem alone. Therefore, a symbiosis of mutualism emerged in which, with this approach, the government and the people can stop the accumulation of plastic waste, which has recently increased greatly. So that's all for me. Thank you.
Alternative packages as a solution for responsible consumption. As a mean to achieve SDG 12, responsible consumption and production, one shall not merely rely on policymaking stakeholders and for-profit institutions. Although it is important to enforce the responsibility on shifting the industry into a direction of ethical and sustainable production, as they are the ones who had the judicial authority and financial resources to do so, yet at the same time, the public as a consumer also need to engage and be invited to engage by being provided with access and option, which would nurture public procurement that would lead to the alleviations of plastic waste and the increase of more ethical and sustainable consumption. Saving the planet could only be achieved once everyone are involved and contribute within the scope of their capacity. This could only happen once business and government provide the public with alternative. In the status quo, there are a lot of innovations and seeking alternatives to plastics, and Indonesia is not being left behind. In terms of its innovations and initiative, however, before we dilute it with these alternative materials, first we need to acknowledge that plastic within itself is not inherently a bad thing, as they provide a legitimate function and play a crucial role in both being the main material in creation of certain product and also being the source of material for product packaging. The vices of plastic does not only revolve around its overproduction, because we also need to take into account its harms towards the ecosystem due to its natures of non-decomposing, as well as the pollution that is created out of its own production that deteriorates the environment. This is why its alternative shall not only having an ethical sources of material collected, but also having the ability to decompose without sacrificing its durability. The caveat is that not all alternatives are greener, and oftentimes this glorified natural-based plastic, which is created through natural resources, is quite ambiguous by definition, but it is also misleading. Ethylene derived from petrol, which also came from the nature, is formed into a launching to become polyethylene, which is the main source of plastic in the world at the moment. They are called PET, and this carbon chain makes them durable and stable against many circumstances. Moreover, they are affordable and easy to produce. Yet, on the contrary, they are harder to break apart by itself, which makes them non-biodegradable. Meanwhile, bio-based plastic is created through ethanol, and they are turned into polyethylene through separating ethanol from H2.0, which is water. They are called bio-PET. They act similar to petrol-based plastic with the same level of durability. These mean, although they are slightly greener and economical nuance because their main sources of reduction is coming from vegetative, yet 45% of them are not biodegradable, which means that they could also deteriorate the planet and possess the same level of harm towards the ecosystems as common plastic. They could also clog waterways, disturb marine life, and so on. According to Ramesh Padamati, a chemist studying biodegradability of plastics and research associate professors in Trinity College, stated that
biodegradability comes from the chemistry of the materials. You can produce materials from renewable resources. Either they can be biodegradable or they can be non-degradable, similar to your fossil-based plastics.
Moreover, the initiative to change all PET into bio-PET as a move from the industry to be more sustainable or somewhat greenwashing. In order to divert all plastic into bioplastic, the country needs to shift corpse production from food sources towards bioplastic. This creates negative repercussion towards soil and water from carbon footprint, and although some bioplastic companies seek to cooperate with local sustainability grown corpse, yet it is still lack transparency due to lack of socializations and hard to distinguish characteristics. Consumers are unaware of how their plastic being produced, the inputs of the plastic, and even the differences between decomposable and non-decomposable bioplastic. Be that as it may, what are alternatives that Indonesian society have in alleviating its plastic waste? Our groups classify them into two types with commonly understood terms. First, traditional alternative. Taking into account ethnic grassroots in Southeast Asia and throughout the years has had sustainable tendency in a way in which they package their food. They would mobilize and preserve them through natural resources that is easily available and could be found in a variety of culture as it is universally known, and the way in which it was created are passed down throughout the century. For packages intended to be used as single-use, traditional society who reside further from metropolitan areas such as districts in Java, Sumatra, and Kalimantan would utilize a banana leaf in a way that it could sustain food and use it as a preferable food packages as opposed to styrofoam or plastic containers. Meanwhile, packages made out of dried leaf, such as rattan, or in other words anyaman, will often be more durable and intended for a longer period of use. Moreover, some households even prefers rattan as opposed to plate. Not only as the packages, rattan could even be created into furniture, bags, hat, and many other items. A local-based socialpreneurship, Do Anyam, consistently trade its product to Japan. It even gained recognition from major furniture brands such as IKEA. This is a positive attribute to be cherished, as the items are created with ethical labor, where mothers from remote villages in Nusantara are being paid accordingly without any enforcement. Second, modern alternative. In terms of innovation and sustainable alternative, Indonesia is not left behind as there are an ongoing realization throughout its younger peers to focus on environmental changes. Their concern is manifested through a variety of innovation that could replace plastic. Not only that, the sources are abundant. The materials are more decomposable than common plastic alternatives such as post-consumer resin, making it more sustainable and better for the environment. What these innovations often lacks is simply funding to be able to produce them in a larger scale and succeed in the market. One of the prime examples is cassava-based plastic bag. This bioplastic could hold 3 times heavier than other bioplastic, and it had a very short time span of decomposition, as short as only 2 months. According to Indonesia's Ministries of Industry, 18.3 million of cassava were produced on 2022. Yet, as much as 30% of them, being the skin, are not being used by the general public. Kevin Putra, one of the founder company that creates packages out of cassava, stated that through their research and development, they found cassava to be the most ideal, given the volume of production that it has and compared to corn leaves and sugarcane. There are other innovations such as eco bricks that are not necessarily an alternative to replace plastic, yet however, they are still worth mentioning, as eco brick is essentially an environmental friendly brick created out of recycled materials and construction waste, including plastic.